So thank you. And first of all, we hope that all of you are well and safe. And we're very happy that you've chosen to spend some time with us tonight. We have over 200 participants registered for this webinar from 14 states. And recently we found out from the United Kingdom and Lagos. We hope that each of you learned from our different presenters about the variety of options that can help you to communicate more effectively during these very challenging times. Among our participants, we have people who rely extensively on speech reading in order to communicate, some who rely on it in combination with other visual options, including ASL and other sign language systems. We hope that we will be able to address many of your concerns, but if you have an individual, very specific question that we do not get to, you can always email us after the webinar at info@chchearing.org, and we'll be happy to try to help you more specifically then. Now, during the webinar, if you have any questions, if you click at the bottom of the screen on Q&A, simply type your question. We'll be reading some after each presenter and at the end. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ellen Lafargue, who's the co-director of the Shelley and Stephen Einhorn Audiology and Communication Centers. Ellen is an audiologist with a particular expertise in the management of adults with hearing loss and directs a staff of 5 audiologists. Ellen, I'll turn this over to you now.
Thank you, Laurie, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As an audiologist for over 35 years, there are a few very basic things that I say to every one of my clients. We're going to try to make you hear as much as you possibly can with your hearing aids, and then there are some things that you need to do from your end. And that starts with making sure that people can see you can see people's faces. It's making sure that you are close to the person, hopefully within 3 feet, so that you get as much sound as possible. And obviously, those things are out the window now. We can't get within 3 feet of people. We have to be at least 6 feet away. And it's mandated that anytime people are outside, that they're wearing face masks, and that is going to completely obstruct your view. So with these issues, we now have to come up with strategies and talk about some tools that we can use to try to help mitigate some of the problems that are coming up from the inability to be able to see people because of the face masks. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is what happens to sound as the speech is coming through the face mask. There was an article published on April 1st of 2020 in the Hearing Review by Drs. Golden and Weinstein that explains that face masks become what's called a low-pass filter. In other words, they allow low-pitch sounds through the mask, but not the higher-pitch sounds. And the amount that's not coming through varies depending on the type of mask that's worn. With a standard face covering, it's about 3 decibels that doesn't come through. And with an N95, which are the recommended masks to be worn in medical settings, as much as 12 dB can be stopped. And that's a lot of sound. And that is why your ability to understand speech is being impacted so much when you're wearing a face mask, or I should say when someone else is wearing a face mask. It's not just a matter of volume, but it's also the distortion because those high-pitched sounds are not coming through. And in the English language, a lot of the meaning of speech sounds like T and S and SH are all high-pitched sounds, and those sounds are being blocked by the masks. So, and then on top of that, many people with hearing loss, the high-pitched sounds is what is affected more than the lower-pitched sounds. So we add all these things together, and it's creating a lot of difficulty in understanding speech through these face masks. The second issue that that comes up in regards to face masks is the ability, the fact that when you take a face mask off, if you are the person wearing a hearing aid or a cochlear implant processor, you take the mask off and the hearing aid can go flying. And we are seeing a very big increase in the number of hearing devices that are getting lost. And so we're going to be talking about that in a little bit to see some tools that we can do to try to get rid of that. The last thing you need to be worrying about right now in the middle of a pandemic is how am I going to replace my expensive hearing device? So we're going to see what we can do to try to stop that from happening. One of the things that all of us have seen on social media and on the press lately are face masks that have a clear vinyl window on them, and that has been designed, and very cleverly so, so that people can still speech read, see the lips as people are talking through the masks. The big problem with those is that they are really not available in many, many places. Our agency is trying to get those, and we're on a waiting list. So they are not easy to come by. There are some patterns that are available to make your own. It's really important to remember that those make your own masks are not FDA approved, and so probably are not going to be appropriate for a medical setting, but very much appropriate for a family or for, with a friend, if they can get those clear masks. And we will be providing patterns for those homemade masks in a handout that will be emailed to all of the participants in this webinar today. There is a concern with the clear masks that they fog up, and that is and has been an issue. Some people are saying that if you wash it with a soapy water prior to putting it on and then dry it, that stops it from fogging up as much. So there are some things that you can read about that can help to use those more effectively. The other concern about those masks and others are that they tend to be uncomfortable if you wear them for a long time. I really do worry about the hearing devices getting mixed up with the mask as you take them off. So I have Carolyn Stern, who is going to model for us some of the mask and hearing devices. Carolyn is the Assistant Director of Outreach and Strategic Initiatives at CHC, and she is also a consumer of hearing healthcare. So as soon as Carolyn, there we go. Welcome, Carolyn. Thanks for joining me and being my model today.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Would you like me to start modeling?
Yes, please. So
okay. So here I have an example of a mask with elastic bands. I'm going to put it on and show you what happens when I take it off. Maybe this has already started happening for you. And I just want to clarify, for those of you who don't know me, I have 2 cochlear implants that look like behind the ear hearing aids. Okay, so the mask is on my face. And now I'm going to take it off.
And look what happened.
Okay, so Ellen and I and some of the clinicians and other clients have come up with a few suggestions that we can make to protect your devices. The first suggestion is to use straps that people put on their eyeglasses. I don't know if you can see this, but this is an example of a $2 eyeglass holder from CVS. It's readily available, usually in the very bottom of the over-the-counter eyeglasses that are on the display. You need to buy 2 of them. And what we're proposing is to put the loop end of the eyeglass strap on the hearing aid or the cochlear implant device and pin it with a safety clip on the other end of the rope. It will look something like this. So here I have the loop connected to an old hearing aid of mine, and then I can pin it to my clothing here. So essentially it would fit on my ear the way it normally does, and then if it accidentally gets dislodged, it will only fall as far as the rope goes. So that's one way to protect your devices. There's a video of this, of Ellen discussing this on our blog, if you would like more information about that. There's a commercially available similar product to the strap called an Odo clip, and we will put this in the handout that we send out tomorrow. So that's another item you can look for so that you don't have to assemble everything the way I just showed you. It just has a clip on both ends and makes it very easy to attach to your hearing device and your clothing. Another suggestion is to use wig tape. And this is readily available online, or I'm not sure if you can get it at a drugstore, but I know you can buy it online. And what we're proposing is you just put the tape on the end side of the hearing aid that's touching your skin, and that should hold it in place to a certain degree. And then finally, really, this is probably the best solution for me. Someone with glasses, 2 devices, a lot to think about. I really like using just a basic headband that you can get at any drugstore. Hair accessories comes in lots of different colors, and you just put it on very easily. Now, is it the most fashionable? Probably not, but once we figure it out, then we can make more fashionable ones. So I'm going to put it on here like this, and it fits over and really secures it in place. And then for people with hearing aids, you might get feedback. People with cochlear implants will not get feedback. So if you do have behind the ear hearing aids or receiver in the canal hearing aids, which is about 70% of all hearing aid users, you can also play with it a little bit and push it back and see if it's a good solution for you. Okay.
And there's one more solution that it pains me a little bit as an audiologist to suggest, but if you are really worried about losing your hearing aids when you're going out with a face mask on, you can decide not to wear your hearing aids out of the house. The caveat to that is that you then have to be really prepared on the limitations of communication without wearing hearing aids. So you have to be ready for that.
Okay. So next, I'm just going to take you through some examples of how to actually wear the mask well with your devices. It's suggested, and I agree, to use the devices, the mask with the straps, the tie-back straps, as opposed to the elastic ones. This is an example of a mask that was just made for me by a resident in my town, and the straps are too short. So a simple solution is to tie on extra string or shoelaces that you might have in the house. And the goal is to tie it as high up above the head as possible so that it does not go over the devices. Some people can tie it underneath behind the neck so it goes down a little lower. I haven't had a lot of success with that yet, but maybe that will work for you. Let me show you what I mean. So here I have the mask. I have the second one in the same fabric, and I'm going to tie it now.
So as you can see, Carolyn's mask, the ties of the mask are really off the hearing aid because it's going above towards the top of her head, and that will make it much less likely for the hearing aids to get pulled off her ears when she pulls that down.
Okay, so now I wanted to show you a few things of what to do if you have an elastic mask. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Maybe this is handed to you to wear when you get to a hospital. So again, the goal is to pull the elastic as far away from your devices as possible in the same direction, up to the top of the head or even down below. And what the aim to do is to find something in your home that can clip together the two elastics. So some examples could be a twisty in your house, paper clips clipped together, and even an extra piece of Velcro. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when you put on paper clips. So here I have put together two paper clips, a blue and a metal one. I lodged them together, linked them together, and then I just slipped on the elastic into each one. And now I'm going to pull it on to my head up above. Okay.
So again, you can see that the straps are well away from the hearing device. When she takes that off, it's not going to dislodge the device at all.
Right, it's actually pretty comfortable. The other examples I've seen, and I actually have used myself, is you can also put the elastics onto your ponytail if you have a ponytail or a bun. We've even seen people use children's toys to do that. Okay. The last example is probably the best one for me, and it's just building on the band example, is to sew on two buttons. These are the buttons that I had in my home this weekend, and it's very comfortable. So I put it on like this, put the band in place, and then you simply attach the elastic bands to the buttons.
And there you have it.
Okay.
So I think one of the takeaways from all of these examples is that you have to plan ahead. You can't decide, all right, I have to go out for an appointment in 5 minutes from now, and then, oh, let me grab my face mask and what am I going to do? I think the best thing, when possible, is to plan ahead, practice with somebody who's in your home if there's someone there, or even in front of a mirror so that you can see what you're comfortable with, what works, where you are comfortable with the hearing aids, the mask, and all of these things behind your ear. So plan ahead, key takeaway there. The next part we'd like to talk about is once the masks are in place and you have your hearing aids on and you are speaking to someone, what can you do to improve your ability to hear? One of the simplest things that you can do is remember that you have a volume control on your hearing aid, if indeed you do, which most people do. And sometimes just making the hearing aid a little bit louder will give you more sound. And it's amazing how often we just don't think about that. So whether it's a remote control operated through your phone or it's a button on the hearing aid, remember that you likely have the flexibility of making the hearing aid louder. Secondly, there are a lot of assistive listening devices that can be used in addition to or instead of hearing aids. You may already own these and just haven't used it in a while. One of the most common ones is something called an FM system. Carolyn's going to show us an example of an FM. The important part to remember about an FM system is that it requires two pieces. One piece that the person with the hearing loss wears so that the sound gets from that device into the hearing aids. And then a second part that the speaker would talk into. Now, under normal circumstances, we would hand that microphone to the speaker and ask them to speak directly into it, because that way the sound is not traveling over such a long distance to get to you. In the current situation, it is likely that you don't want to hand over a device to someone because you don't want bacteria to get onto that device. So just the act of pointing it towards the person as close to them as you're comfortable in getting that device will give you more sound than the hearing aid alone. The piece that Carolyn was holding up is a microphone. They come in different styles. There's a very common one that's called a Roger pen. Unfortunately, all of our Roger pens are in our offices and we're not there, but they look very much like this silver pen that Carolyn is holding up. And the two pieces work together. Again, the real pen, not the pretend one, and the device that she's wearing around her neck in order to get the sound directly in. There are other kinds of devices that people can use. Many people now have hearing aids that have Bluetooth built into them. And if you have a Bluetooth enabled hearing aid, you can use it with a cell phone. If you have an iPhone, there is a feature on it called Live Listen. And Live Listen turns your iPhone into a remote microphone. So you could point your cell phone towards the person speaking while you have this enabled, and the sound will go directly into your hearing aid, giving you a little bit of an advantage. If you have a Bluetooth enabled hearing aid, but you don't have an iPhone, you have an Android type of smartphone, there is an intermediary device that you can get. These things are very individualized and not the kind of thing you just order online. I would suggest strongly that you speak with your audiologist about which of these works with the hearing aids that you have and how you can best set up for the best possible communication. Carolyn's now going to talk about some apps that can help with communication.
Thank you. So now I'm just going to speak for a few minutes about how you might be able to use your smartphone with apps to facilitate the conversations you might be having in person when masks are worn. The first approach is to use speech-to-text apps. These are apps that some of you may have already started using that transcribe speech in real time using the screen of your smartphone to display what is being said with quite high accuracy. Some of these apps are called Google Live Transcribe, which works on Android phones, and Otter and Ava work on both iPhones and Android phones. So when you're standing at a distance from someone, let me show you how it works. So this is an example of my Android phone with Google Live Transcribe turned on. And as I speak, the language is being translated with high accuracy on the screen. But with social distance, so give it a try. This might help with spontaneous conversations that you weren't expecting to have, or just to help facilitate a conversation. But it's possible that in social distancing, being 6 or more feet away, that your smartphone may not pick up the speech. So this is where we recommend that you explore using a microphone, either Bluetooth or plugged in, to enhance the smartphone's ability to pick up this speech from a distance. So this is an example of a Bluetooth mic that I have used for quite a while called ALEAD, A-L-E-A-D. We will put some of this information in the follow-up email tomorrow, so don't worry about writing everything down. This pairs through Bluetooth. It connects to my smartphone, and similar to the way Ellen was proposing using the assisted devices, you could also hold this out at an arm's length to try to pick up this speech. There are other types of microphones out there that might work better for you or be more affordable. This is an example of a plug-in mic, and then you simply use the adapter that came with your phone and plug it in here. I'm still testing some of these out myself to see what works best. This will work with Android phones and iPhones, and it should work with the speech to text apps that you may already have been using currently. Okay. The second thing we want you to think about is before you rush out to that meeting that you have to go to that's going to be in person or something you have to pick up at the store, think about how you could prepare information in advance to keep the conversations clear, concise, short, so that you can avoid a lot of unexpected questions, unexpected topics that you have to explain because they're not clear. So there are some apps that can help you prepare, and the idea is to write down the information either on paper or you could do it on an app. So the apps that I'm talking about are in a category called digital index cards. And a lot of students use these today to prepare for school. And it's the same idea of using paper index cards that may be used in the past to keep information, study for class. And we even use this in the deaf and hard of hearing community for many years to help people communicate by writing down phrases. So the two apps that I was going to show you today are ones that I use sometimes. And one is called Buzz Cards. Another one is called Cardzilla. And the other one is Big Note. So I'm going to show you Buzz Cards. Buzz Cards is just an digital index app. And it has a history of all the different phrases that I have set up in advance. And so the example I want to show you is if I have to go to the pharmacy, I could put everything on the card or maybe two cards to just get all the information out of the way, because sometimes they ask you questions in different order. What's your name? And then they want to know your insurance, then they want to know your birth date. So you could put everything on a card. The example, I'm actually wrong. The example I have on here is to pick up your food. So this is an example. Pick up, take out for Stern, 3 burgers and fries, thank you. This way, I don't have to worry. Are they asking me what my last name is? Are they asking me what was in my order? And you could alter this. Let's say if you're going to the pharmacy, you could create a new one yourself and just create a new one here. And just say, you know, I'm here to pick up my drugs. Okay, I quickly typed it, and here it is right here, and then you can just move on. The other app that I like is Cardzilla, and it does the same thing. Here's the example of going to the pharmacy. My doctor called in a prescription at 4 o'clock today for Carolyn Stern. Then it's simply, you just wipe it or go like this, it goes away, and then you can tap on microphone and have the other person speak back, and it will pick up their speech. So here I tapped on microphone, and that's how you might be able to make your conversations a little bit more manageable when you're in these situations with masks. But it does take a little bit of practice. It takes time to learn how to use the apps. You may need to think through, is it safe to use your phone in this situation with, you know, touching your phone? You might want to put your phone in a plastic bag. So there are different things you can do to eliminate that concern. And if you have an iPhone, for example, you could put your settings on, remove the auto lock, and this could keep the screen of the iPhone open for a very long, uninterrupted time. And that will also help you to not have to touch your screen as much. So these are just some examples, but pen and paper definitely is fail-proof. So always have pen and paper with you, but give these apps a try. I hope this will be helpful to you. Now I'm going to turn this over to Laurie Hanin for the rest of the panel.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ellen and Carolyn, for such great suggestions. Some of them new to me as well. I'm going to take the time now for 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll be coming back after all of the panelists have spoken. So one question that came in, Ellen, is what you thought about using face shields instead of masks, and if that just might, if we know yet, if that would make the sound any more accessible. Obviously, it makes it visible, but do we know yet if it blocks more or less sound?
I don't know the answer to that. I would think that it would be less distorting because the sound, the mask isn't directly over the mouth, so there would be less distortion. But it's also most cases where they're using face shields, it's in addition to masks, not instead of, because of the risk of spreading contagion. So we have to be very careful about, you know, which of those we're going to be using and when.
Great, thank you. And before I get to one more question, there was some concern that we're giving a lot of information, which is terrific, and people taking a lot of notes. Wanted to let you know we are recording this, and we plan to post this within 24 to 48 hours. So you'll have access to this after the fact, as well as we'll have a handout of some information that we'll post. So you don't really have to worry so much about writing everything down. Feel free, but if you want to give it a rest, that's okay too. One quick question, and if it's not quick, we'll wait till a little bit later. Is it easy to find, Carolyn, on the iPhone where Live Listen is? Do they just go into that as an app, or is that an app you need to download?
Okay. So all of the apps that I spoke about are available in the iPhone App Store. And if you have an Android phone, they're available in the Google Play Store.
If I might interrupt,
go ahead.
Live Listen is a feature that works with people who have hearing aids that are Bluetooth enabled, or they have AirPods. So that's how you would access through either the hearing aid part of the app or the AirPod part of the settings section in your iPhone. It's not a separate app by itself.
That's right.
Okay, great, thank you. And just one more logistics question to try to help people. Some people are asking if they could move the captions around. And yes, you can slide it around as you would any other box or text on the screen. So just experiment with that if you'd like to put it in a different place. Okay, at this time, thank you again, Ellen and Carolyn, and we'll see you again and hear from you again at the end. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jeff Wax, who will show up momentarily. Oh, I think he's there. There he is.
Hello.
Jeff is the director of the Baker Family Emotional Health and Wellness Center at CHC. Jeff is a licensed clinical social worker, and he directs CHC staff of licensed clinical social workers and our psychologist. Jeff and his staff are all fluent in ASL and provide support to individuals with hearing loss and their families, and is here to share some of his words of wisdom about navigating these challenging times. Jeff, I turn it to you.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Laurie. I want to take a deep breath, everybody. It's very odd. We're all in our living rooms or bedrooms or sitting rooms, and there's a whole audience out there. And right now I only see Laurie, which is a lovely face to look at. As Ellen and Carolyn were talking, I was thinking about what some of you might be have thought about or experiencing as they were talking as well, which is how am I going to do all of that? I can't possibly do all of that. We start to think about, oh, now I have to get buttons and I have to get hairbands and I have to. So all to say that those are called emotional reactions, right? Emotional responses. That may be obvious to all of us or some of us. I like to state the obvious. People who know me, I like to name things. So one thing, I wanted to comment of a few different areas, and in my area of work life at CHC, in the emotional health and wellness department. First off, remember that we need to take care of our physical bodies, and we need to take care of our emotional bodies as well. Don't forget about our emotional well-being. So I wanted to make some points about the topic this evening, obviously about masks, about living with hearing loss, about the impact of hearing loss in people's lives, and the triggers that get stirred up by the world that we're living in currently, dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So in no particular order, I'm just going to mention a few things, and then I'm sure we're going to tie it all together with some during the Q&A portion. So to name some things, when the world is crazy, when the world is chaotic, when the world really threatens to overwhelm us, it's really a natural emotional response to feel anxious and to feel fear and to feel overwhelmed and disoriented. And I have a long list, but I won't tell you all of them. Frustrations. We can feel like things are out of control. And we can also, of course, feel that in our individual lives, different situations. We can feel a range, of course, and a range of intensities of emotional reactions, but we certainly have them. So just kind of a paradigm, situation happens, we have an emotional response, we live through it, right? We try to live through it. When we don't live through it, then problems come up, but we want to live through the feeling and not have it just stay with us. So one thing about emotional responses is that, number one, we've all had them since the day we were born. They're not new. We come up with new situations all the time, right? We live through different situations all the time, but we live through them, and we know what to do. The tips earlier, the conversation a little earlier with Ellen and Carolyn, maybe some of those things I didn't know either, or how to not let a hearing aid or cochlear implant device, fly off with the mask. But we've lived through certain kinds of similar situations before. Another thing to remember is that we cannot always change people. We cannot always change situations, but we can change, or we can practice changing our emotional responses to them. So when communication, and I know everybody has at some point in time communication issues, barriers, difficulties, when those happen, sure, there's going to be frustrations and or anger. Later, I often hear people joke about those situations. For people with hearing loss, I thought you said fill in the blank, and it's usually something, it could be something funny. So we certainly use humor a lot to get through frustrating situations. Another point, know that this current crisis in the world is amplifying and really magnifying all of those frustrations, angers. It makes it larger right now. Life is much more stressful right now. I mean, I think we're already feeling, because we're so used to hearing about it on the news, in life, we're living it, we're working at home, we're just living it now for more than a month, right? And it's already in our language about pandemic, and it's part of the language we use every day. That does not mean that it's not extraordinary time that we're living in, right? So remember that as well. This is really a stressful time for everyone. Another thing that it brings up, a more stressful time like this, is that it can make us feel like why, either it's a kind of like, why me, or why is this happening again? It being a frustration, it being anger. Why doesn't the hearing world know that I can't understand, I can't read lips, I can't speech read, I can't hear through the mask? And you could get pretty angry and pretty frustrated. Certainly as a professional working with deaf and hard of hearing communities for many years, I can get very frustrated with the hearing world, who doesn't know many things that you all know very well, right? So it can create that feeling of, again, like, why all over again, really? I was thinking about this, and I was remembering I was at the Women's March in Washington many months ago, and I'm sure we all saw pictures, or I saw it in person. There was an older lady, I think she was well into her 80s, maybe into her 90s, with a wonderful placard. To me, it was a wonderful placard of protest, and her saying something like, I can't believe I am still, after all these years, saying the same things, right? So a lot of these issues around communication and communication barriers, and how the invisible disability, so to speak, right, that the hearing world still doesn't know about that. Well, you're right, they don't know about it. I wrote down, I'm looking down, I wrote down these issues of that we're still dealing with, and the challenges of the past, which we used to think are in the past, but they're in the present, and they're current over and over again. And of course, the thing about hearing loss, as I don't have to tell you guys, you know it very well because you live it, is that it doesn't go away. Right? It's chronic. And the situations in life that bring on angers or frustrations or sadness are still present, and they happen over and over again. Hopefully not in the same way at all. In fact, most of the time we adapt really well. And that's good. And that's a good thing. It brings me to another point about trying to keep a certain perspective about a situation that may come up and cause anxiety. You've all lived through a difficult time in a communication, in an interaction, in a restaurant, at a conference, in a doctor's office, in a theater, you name it. We've had different kinds of situations, right? In that moment, here's a little tip. In that moment, see if you can take a step back and think on like a scale of 0 to 10. 10 is like the worst catastrophe. 0 is nothing. If you can say to yourself, okay, that made me really anxious, where would you put it on the scale 0 to 10? If it's a 4, I would say, great, that's really fantastic. It's only a 4. That's pretty standard reaction. Even less, even better, right? If it's an 8, a 9, or a 10, that's much more distressful. The key to some of that is if it stays there. If it stays at an 8 or 9 or 10, not good, right? So you have to take steps for yourself to do something good for yourself, take that step back. But this idea of putting a number to that feeling takes it out of ourselves. It puts it out in the world, and you can kind of go like I just did. Oh, that was only a 5. It's not a 10. It's only a 5. I can live with that. I can live with that. There's a wonderful website. There's also a book from a few years ago called 10% Happier. And it's a great website. I recommend going to it. I have no stake in it at all, except I really like it. But one of the concepts, the premise is that if you can just be 10%, they say 10% happier, but it could be 10% anything. If you could just be 10% happier, that goes a long way. It really can have it can be very impactful. One thing that that people brought up, that Ellen and Carolyn were bringing up before as well, that made me think of that we've lived through this before. Watching Carolyn show you how to put the masks on, or the scarf on, the headband on, it struck me that yes, it may be a brand new thing that we've never done before, putting a mask on, right? We don't usually do that. It's something new, and it's something new to learn. And when we're learning something, we're going to make mistakes. So be patient with yourself, but also just be careful. You know, when people first got a hearing aid or other devices, you had to learn how to be careful. Carolyn put that mask on really with a lot of skill, and I don't know if she's been doing it all that often, and the headband. It struck me too that mostly for women, but for men also, if you're wearing a necklace, if you're taking off a shirt, if you're anything around your head and your ears, you've already learned how to be careful with your hearing aids not popping off, not getting lost. Of course that happens. Of course I know that happens. But the reminder of, oh, I've done this before. When I put on earrings, when I put on this necklace, when I put anything over my head, I have to be careful. So you've done that before. Now it's just something that you're going to do again. But this time you're going to do it with a mask. And sure, it is a little different. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I wanted to say one more thing about having done things before and having lived through tough times before. We can be very resilient. Sometimes we don't think we are, but we actually, as a society and as individuals, we've actually lived through a lot. Nobody's immune to heartache or illness, or parents and grandparents and great-grandparents living through the Great Depression or war and 9/11, my goodness, we've all lived through really tough things before. It doesn't minimize when we're living through tough times now, but it does remind us that there is a strength in us that we have, and sometimes we can find. People are also talking about, in this time of the pandemic, of the benefits. Of course, nobody wanted this to happen, but the unforeseen benefits. Oh, I'm learning. I have more time. I can write the book I never wrote, and now I can do that. One thing that struck me actually just today, apropos of tonight and this topic, is that some of you in the ether, in the audience out there, have been such incredible advocates for the deaf and hard of hearing communities in so many different ways for so many years. And I stress it that way because we know that advocacy and making people aware, making the public aware, doesn't happen overnight. It's not a light switch. It takes years and years and years of information going out there. Well, in the past week, I have seen more articles and TV reports, news reports, and tonight about the use of masks and the deaf and hard of hearing community. What a benefit for the hearing world to know and to become more aware of this issue. It's like free publicity. We did not ask for the publicity whatsoever, but one of the side benefits is you have people, the hearing world, who, by the way, are also struggling with communication. It kind of levels the playing field here. We all have to wear masks. We all have to be behind a plastic barrier and won't be able to hear what someone is saying to us. So that's kind of a cool benefit in the scheme of things as well. Last thing. So I want you to make sure, and as best you can, to live with as much beauty and light as you can. Have patience with yourself and these new challenges that are brought upon us. The distressing emotions and anxieties and fears, they're all present. They sure are. It's inevitable. But, you know, as they say, pain is inevitable, but suffering is not. So let's not let those anxieties and fears make us suffer. Let's just live through them. It's just a feeling. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I have one question that came in. I think that's well addressed to you. And if you could give us a short answer to this, should you even bother asking a question of somebody who's wearing a mask if you know that you're not going to understand? And I hear the frustration in that question.
Should you bother to ask the question, knowing
when you know you won't understand?
Well, I would say, like a lot of things in life, that can be kind of ambiguous. And the answer is, it depends. And you make your own judgment call about that, because if it's something of an emergency nature and it's super important, you bet you ask the question and you use the devices and you write things down and you bet you ask the question. If it's something that you feel like, oh, that could wait, or it's not that important to me right this second, and I don't want to avoid frustration, then sure, don't ask the question.
And also just to just kind of bring back something also that Carolyn said, just to sort of tie it together, and instead of waiting to the end as well, also remember, ask for it in writing. Pen and pencil also, it still works, I'm told. So that's also a good option to use.
Right, absolutely. And an example that I had in my life just the other day, where it was a hearing person, again, behind a mask, behind a face shield, using pen and paper. Actually, they were using almost like cue cards. They had prepared, they had planned, and they held up this clipboard with a question to me because I was behind glass, and then they flipped it, and then they flipped it. And this had nothing to do with hearing loss. It had everything to do with communication and
Right.
ease of communication.
And sometimes it's the simplest tricks that still work that we need to remember.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for helping everybody feel a little bit more at ease. And you could do a little bit more of that later on. Now I'm happy to introduce Liz Ying. Liz is the co-director of the Shelley and Stephen Einhorn Audiology and Communication Centers. Liz is a speech-language pathologist with extensive experience, there she is, in communication therapies for children and adults with hearing loss, with an expertise in the development of auditory skills and spoken language development. She directs a staff of 5 speech-language pathologists and 2 teachers of the deaf. So Liz, I'd like to turn this over to you.
Okay, and I'm going to say it's a pleasure to be here. And I love working with this particular team because so many points have already been made, and I can probably speed this up a bit so that you can ask questions of us all at the end. Sadly, in one sense, the social distancing and use of facial masks is not going to be short-lived. It is, as a member of society, one of our ways, or probably the only way at this point, that we can personally contribute to keeping ourselves and our neighbors and friends safe. So while this is viewed as a social inconvenience to many people who have normal hearing, for those of you who have hearing loss, this has created, just as we've all talked tonight, many challenges. And yet, as Jeff said, how great that there are some options and some different ways perhaps of thinking and approaching the situation. So if I had one take-home message that I could just stop my presentation, it would be use every tool available to you, okay? As mentioned earlier, the person that you're communicating with right now, because of the state of our society, the restrictions we have in terms of who is allowed to be out and interacting with us, are those first responders. And keep in mind, those are people who've been going out through all of the 2 months that we've been in quarantine. They want to help you. They may not know how to help you. And I feel that there is stress on their part as much as on the part on your part, okay? So I'd like to encourage, as Jeff said, you would think that by now people would understand, but they don't. Or they have so many other things to be concerned about. They too would like the conversational exchange to be as quick and as efficient as possible. So they want to help you. I truly believe that. But we may need to give them some guidance. And that guidance would be to express what your needs are. You might have to say, can you talk a little bit more slowly? Not pull down your mask. Can you repeat that, whatever you said to me? And then if they repeat it 1 or 2 times and you see in their eyes, because their eyes are not covered, and that is conveying emotion to you, some frustration to say, or maybe rephrase it. Could you rephrase that for me? So saying it a different way will make a difference in many instances. You might say, could you spell that last word? I think I heard, and give them some feedback about what you think you perceived. That would also help them to know what they have to repeat back or change or alter for you. We've discussed the use of different devices, the apps, the mask, the clearer mask. The preparation that you should employ before venturing out to do your errands is a little bit easier, because through this pandemic, we've learned that there's a lot that can be done virtually. So many telehealth appointments can now be done on your computer or on your phone. So you can call, you can write your questions, you can use the visual cues or visual means of asking your questions, of filling out your forms, or expressing your comments. I know the other day I texted my physician, we had a chat back and forth, and I didn't have to go in. By the same token, we've learned that you can have shopping done for you. You could call the pharmacist ahead of time and say, I need to pick up my prescription. It should have been called in by my doctor earlier this afternoon. Can you have it available? Grocery stores in my area are doing the same things. People can call in their groceries, someone shops, and you can then have it, it's ready for you for pickup when you get to the store. So we didn't have those kind of options, at least in my neighborhood, prior to COVID-19. Those are definite pluses, as Jeff said, so look for the things that are positive out of this experience. But in anticipation that you will be going to the pharmacy, going to the grocery store, which are basically the 2 things open here, although I think liquor stores are also open in New York. Prior to doing that, I'd like to suggest a few things, okay? Take a deep breath. Understand the situation you're venturing into. What are the likely, as Carolyn said, the likely questions or prompts that might be asked? and prepare those in advance. You can use one of our wonderful apps available. You can write it on a notepad. You can use a whiteboard, and that you can write definitely big enough that someone could see it 6 feet away. But know that the vocabulary you're going to need or the topics being discussed at the grocery store are not the same prompts that are going to be asked at the doctor's office. So if it means you're creating a little script and doing some practice, knowing that communication is a two-way street, your ability to clearly express what your needs are may in turn help your conversational partner to respond in a clearer way and more appropriate way for you. The other point I'd like to make is, I sort of mentioned it earlier, but your mouth and nose are covered with a mask, your eyes are not. And eyes are very expressive and can convey an awful lot. Raised eyebrows definitely signal someone's asking you a question. Furrowed brow means I don't really understand you. But that's only a part of the whole process, because you have then the whole body, the stance of the person will also give you a lot of information about what they may be asking of you. It's okay to say, I don't understand. Can you write that down? I don't understand. Can you repeat that for me? Finally, I would caution you, or I want you to be proactive in the sense that it is your choice, as Jeff said, to engage or not to engage. I would hope that, especially with the social isolation that many of us are feeling, even when you are in a home with 2 children and other people, the social isolation of not being able to touch and feel another person. I think we're going to learn some new strategies in terms of our greetings, but that's for a later date. For now, I think communication is a valuable exchange. I would hope, and I think that you wouldn't be sitting here tonight if you didn't feel the same. But you have a role to play as in the conversational exchange as well. You can be, as Jeff said, you can give up. You can decide to be angry and blame the person for not understanding or not taking the time or trying. But if it matters to you, I think you will find a way. So I encourage you, again, use the apps, use the Bluetooth technology, use your FMs, write on note cards, and get prepared for the interaction. That's all.
Hi again, Liz.
Hi.
It's so hard not to just want to say hi to you. It's been a long time since we've seen each other in person.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of those tips. I know when I listen to all 3 of you, I always learn things. And we've got a bunch of questions that come in. Before we turn it over to everybody else, though, Liz, I have one question that might be best answered by you. And if you think else, we could hold on to it. But I know that I feel it, and a number of people have said even before the webinar that, and Ellen alluded to this, that speech is muffled anyway when it's spoken into the mask. And that even people who have normal hearing have trouble, but we manage. The fact that it's muffled, is there any particular tip that you have other than the tips that Ellen said about trying to make the signal better? But are there any communication strategies for this kind of situation that you can think of?
I think the most important is to give feedback about what you think was said. It is important for you as the listener to give your partner some information. Did you say that it's in aisle 7 or aisle, 11? So that way the person knows, oh, they didn't understand that part. So it's easier to correct a misperception if we get some feedback. If you just stand there, I say to the kids I work with constantly, don't just look at me, let me know what you think I said. But it's a risk, as Jeff said. You're taking a risk to divulge what you didn't understand, and it's really uncomfortable. And I'm hoping that checkout, that cashier at the checkout, or the receptionist in the nurse's office will also give you the feedback in terms of what they understood. But that's a public education process that we continue to need to do and try to do.
I think that's a great suggestion. So thank you. I think now, through the magic of technology, all of our panelists and presenters are going to be brought back so that we can have a few more questions, as some of the questions that have come in are applicable to more than one presenter. So we will wait for that to happen. We've got just about, I think do we have everybody? I think we now have everybody. Thank you. And Jeff, I believe that you have an additional comment to what Liz just talked about how to help with muffled speech and such.
Yeah. As I was listening to Liz, who is so articulate, I think we're going to say this a lot tonight. This is such a unique moment in time. People come to CHC for various reasons and various workshops. One of them is definitely to learn how to feel empowered as a person living with hearing loss, to advocate for yourself. Liz just said how difficult that is. It is incredibly difficult until you learn and you get used to it by practicing. This unique time, I think, couldn't be a better time to just do it because the hearing world is also doing it. They're doing it just like you might have learned many years ago or last week. They're doing it too. They are awkward. They don't know how to communicate the best way. One practical or idea suggestion around that too is make it visual. I work in sign language a lot. It's a visual language. We work in different areas of making treatment and different talks, workshops, whatever, really accessible for the deaf sign language using community. Obviously interpreters are that, but as a clinician who practices in sign, and I'm trying to think of a concept that I can't get across exactly, make it visual, whatever that is. Eyes, eyebrows, arms, hands, pointing, everyone feels silly, okay? Everyone feels silly, but I think, again, it couldn't be a better time to just, if you struggle with that advocacy part for yourself of saying, I didn't hear you, can you say that again? Now's the time.
Great, thank you. And a question came in, and this came in from a few people in advance of the webinar, so I think it's important. And Carolyn, I think that you might be best served in answering this, putting on the spot a little bit, and then anybody else can jump in. A few people want to know, what's really the best way to identify oneself as hard of hearing or deaf from the get-go, to let the person wearing the mask, the shopkeeper, the doctor, the pharmacist, know that there may be problems? And what's the best way to do that? Perhaps, you have some insight into that and what you've done?
Yeah, the first step is just to acknowledge that it's not easy. This is something you might want to try out, like practice with some close friends or family. You may not get the right response that you want, but I think maybe in this situation, if you just say, I'm hard of hearing, so can you help me communicate better, they're not going to know what that means. So you might say, because your mask is blocking your face, it's preventing me from understanding you well with my hearing loss. I can't see your lips moving, and the mask is preventing my hearing aids or my implant from picking up your voice clearly. So could you please speak louder? Could you speak into my smartphone? Or could you just re-say that a different way? So it's not easy. Maybe you could ask in advance if this person could be patient with you. If they're not, ask them, if they're extremely rushed, then maybe this isn't the right time to ask them to be exceptionally patient. So you have to kind of read the situation too. I mean, if they're rushing around, this is not the time to start giving them a whole summary of your disability and your issue. But maybe you could ask if you could come back another time to set up the conversation when it's less rushed. Maybe you could suggest a phone call instead, because you can use apps and captioning or sign language interpreting for your phone calls. It's not easy. And everybody operates differently. So if you say, I'm deaf, but you happen to be someone who communicates with spoken language and reading lips, they may not understand what that means. So it's not an easy answer.
Okay, thank you. I think one thing that we've all said and heard is that that everything is individual and nothing is really that easy during these times. But I think that we've all heard some really helpful tips. A question came in that's actually interesting. And Ellen, again, I'll ask this, I think, of you. And you may or may not know a quick answer. And if not, we can always get back to somebody. We have an interesting question. Somebody has a business. They mentioned it's a non-essential business, so they're not open right yet, but they deal with lots of children and families and want to try to make it as accessible as possible when they do reopen. And we're interested if there was any kind of a wireless microphone that worked well with an Android, if that's a question that makes sense or not.
So there are a number of different microphones. It depends if the person is using a hearing aid or not. If the person is a hearing aid user, then it very much depends on what brand of hearing aid there is. Most of the different brands have wireless microphones that will work with the Android phone. If the person is not a hearing aid user, and they're looking for a microphone, that's a little bit more complicated, but there are some Bluetooth microphones like the one Carolyn was showing us before. And if someone needs specific brands or specific recommendations, we can certainly do that via email or whatever works best.
Okay, great. And so I would encourage the person who asked that specifically, feel free to email us at the info@chchearing.org. And we'll be happy to answer any individual questions, that we possibly can. We have a few more minutes for questions, and there's a really interesting line of questions that came in, a couple today and a few beforehand, and it relates to school. It relates to school for middle school children, for universities, and both from the teacher's perspective and the student's perspective about what's going to happen in September. And two participants had questions. One was about a middle school student. I don't think the answer is all that different for the two. A middle school student who relies on speech reading, and what's going to happen when he's in school and everybody is wearing a mask. And another participant whose daughter is going to be a freshman at college in September, and what's going to happen with her and her classes. And it's a very big question, and if we could address it briefly, I know I would want to start by saying that some of these issues, things are changing so rapidly. We're located in New York City. Our schools are done for the year, and there's question about what will happen in September. So things change rapidly with this, but I think we all understand, and Liz, maybe you would be, the best to talk about maybe what might a parent do if this is a situation. If you have You know, any tips, not necessarily on specifically what to do, but what should they be thinking about? Who should they be speaking with in school to get the accommodations that a child might need?
Unequivocally, the teacher of the deaf. The hearing education resource personnel or person is the expert in terms of modifications and accommodations needed for classrooms. I do feel that getting the content from the specific coursework is not going to be a problem. I think they've learned a lot from the virtual and remote learning that we've been engaged in over the last 2 months. And so by September, everyone should be really pros at it. But I fear the questions being asked are really related to the socialization aspect. Like, how will you connect with another person up here in your classroom? I think some of the technology we've talked about is going to definitely enhance those options. Most of the newer technology is Bluetooth capable, and using that, some of the devices Ellen described will definitely make their interactions with peers easier. But also the teacher of the deaf, hearing education resource person is going to be your go-to person to get the information for a specific need for your child or student.
Okay, thank you. And I think the same as Jeff said, I think you've all said, it's a complicated issue and it's not going to be a one size fits all. As we said, there are 14 states. There are likely to be 50 different options for schools come September. And so that's also a challenge. Ellen, I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, and if not, we'll tell people to watch the recording. But there was a question, if you could just repeat the level of decibels that are lost in the different masks. I think you addressed that early on.
Yeah, so a standard mask, it's estimated that there's a blockage of about 3 decibels through the cloth or paper masks, and an N95 can be up to 12 decibels.
Okay, great, thank you. That's a lot. That's a big difference. I think that's all the time that we have for questions now. And we really I certainly want to thank all of our presenters, our interpreters, our caption. It's an okay time for me to tell you that we've gotten a lot of compliments on how good the captioning and interpreting is. I couldn't agree more. We've got pros here for sure. Just a reminder that this has been recorded. We will be posting it up. My guess is on our website. It will be available for anybody that comes to visit our website, whether or not they registered for this. Want to let you know that we're seeing people, for televisits right now. We don't yet know when we'll be back in our offices, but hopefully soon. If you have any question about any help that you might need, again, it's info@chchearing.org, whether it's a question or a need for a visit from any of our clinicians. We would be, happy to help you and hope that we could help your communication get better moving forward. I think I didn't say this at the beginning. I am the executive director of the agency and proud of all of our staff. I would be really remiss if I didn't mention at this point that we are trying to provide as much public education in the form of webinars and meetings and blogs in the past 6 weeks as possible. All of this work is unfunded, and we would appreciate any donations that you feel so inclined to make to help us continue this work. We're committed to doing this work. Regardless of what happens, we're here to help everybody connect before and always, and to try to figure out what to do to best help everybody as we move forward through these really unprecedented times. Again, email us with any questions you have, and we'll help you as best as we can. Stay safe, and we hope to see you in person soon. And until that can happen, look forward to seeing you again in this kind of a format. Have a good night.